Hey, you've probably heard that page speed, how fast your page loads on your website, can impact your SEO. We're going to talk about that, where you can find the data, and what you can do about it. Let's take a look. All right. So about 10 years ago, Google said, hey, page speed is important. And, it is a signal for ranking in SEO. And that makes sense, right? Because Google wants to send you to not only the best content that they can, so the most relevant content, but they want to make sure that they're sending you to a good experience. And if the site is just super slow on mobile, particularly, or just a bad, poorly developed site with bad navigation, you're going to leave. And so they track that. They look at if you come from a search result, if you land on a page, immediately do another search result or do another search. It's telling them about the quality of your site. And that could be the quality of your content, but it also can be the quality of how your site behaves. So are the pages loading quickly enough? Is the content shifting? Is it just a bad experience? And so Google has added to the Google Search Console a section called Core Web Vitals. And those vitals will tell you what your site is doing and whether it's a healthy site or a poor site. So we're going to take a look at some of that data and talk about ways that you could impact it or not impact it, and how important it is for your site. Okay, so let's take a look in Google Search Console. What we have here is a website that is actually doing really well in the Core Web Vitals. You can find the Core Web Vitals down on the left-hand side of the Google Search Console, and that is going to be relevant data for how the site's performing. Now, there used to be a page experience section that Google has kind of deprecated, and that was from data from bots. And so Google would scan your site, look at the bot data, and try to understand how your site was performing based on that. But they've moved to the Core Web Vitals, which uses actual user data. So all the data that they're collecting from Google Analytics and other tools and plugins and that type of thing, they're looking at how you're behaving on the site, whether you're converting on the site, how quickly the site's loading, all of that kind of stuff. So Core Web Vitals is data that is coming back to Google from your users. So if you have a relatively new site or you have low traffic, you may not see data in here for everything, or it may be not particularly accurate because maybe Google isn't sampling it enough. They're just not seeing enough data coming through to give you accurate information. However, if you have decent traffic and your site's been around for a while, Core Web Vitals will tell you how it's performing. So if we look in here, you can see mobile is admittedly the more important of the data points as far as usability and page load speeds. Google is going to use that mobile first data because the largest percentage of your traffic is probably coming from mobile in most industries and for most sites. So you can see here that there's 0 poor URLs, 0 that need improvement. There is another report here that you can click through that gives you a little bit more detail. And you can see there's only good pages on this site. So you can see it's fluctuated as far as how many pages, but that they are coming back pretty well. There is some issues that need improvement, but it's not failing as far as Google's concerned. And we'll take a look at what these data points mean in just a minute, what to look at. Now let's take a look at a site that's not performing so well. And so you can see here in this site, it has 430 URLs that are poor and 530, and 510 that need improvement. Now, this is just a sampling of these pages. So it's not every page on the site. So Google is taking the data that it's seeing and then coming through from Google Analytics. So this is not a report about the performance of every page on your site. I know for a fact that this site has thousands and thousands of pages. It's just not necessarily coming through in the data, and it's not being reported on in this report. But this gives you a sampling of the overall health of the site. So in the full report, it's going to give you more information about these pages. So you can see the trend, that they've made some improvements over time, and the pages are still performing poorly overall. This will give you an idea of what is the main issues and how many URLs from this report are the issues. So You can see here, this is a content layout shift. We'll talk about these in a little bit more detail in a minute. This is the largest content paint on paint. It's taking longer than it's supposed to. So this will give you more information about exactly what are the primary problems for this site. This isn't going to give you detailed information necessarily about each of these individual pages unless you click through, and then you can kind of drill down into this to see which of the pages are actually performing the worst. So this will give you an overall sense of how this website's performing and what some of the potential issues might be. So what can you do about it? If you know that your site's performing poorly, what are some of the levers that you can pull to make sure that it's performing better and potentially impact your ranking so that you rank better? Well, let's take a look at another tool that Google has. It's called the Page Speed Insights. And what this will do is you can put in your URL and it will actually give you some more detail about specific pages. So this is going to be not for your site overall, but the specific page that you put in. It could be your home page. If you're a retail site, you could put in, for instance, a sample product page. And that was going to tell you, maybe how all of your product pages are probably performing, because if they're working off a template, they're probably very similar. All of those things are going to impact your site. So let's talk about what we're seeing here. So this is a site that is actually it's failed, and it's doing pretty poorly. And we'll take a look at these different areas. So largest content paint, this is the amount of time that it takes to render the largest content on your viewport. So in your browser, this is the time that is loading. So you're going to see that sometimes happen in real time. For a lot of sites, this is, for instance, the biggest block of text, or it's if you have a video in your top of your homepage or at the top of the page, or if you have a really large hero image that's taking time to load. This is going to be kind of blank initially for your users because they're not seeing this load. So on this site, the average time for users is 5.8 seconds. Now, that's a long time. And so Google wants to see this ideally to be in the green. They want you to see it in 2.5 seconds, with anything over 4 seconds being considered poor. So these guys are in the 6-second range. I can tell from experience, most pages, if you're not loading the entire page in 3 seconds or less, a lot of people are going to bounce. And so not only is this going to affect your SEO, this is going to affect your conversion rate. So if people aren't able to engage with your site, engage with your content, they're going to get frustrated, they're going to leave, and they probably aren't going to come back. So this is why it's an important metric for Google. They want that experience to be good for people. And if they know that certain sections of the site aren't loading or aren't loading quickly enough, that's going to impact how they rank you, because they know that people are going to bounce. Now, that being said, just a quick caveat before we get into this further. Yes, you can have a bad site and still see it rank. You're going to see competitors whose sites load very slowly, and it still is beating your site in the search results. And the reason is that because this is just one signal for Google. It's an important signal, but it's just one signal that they're using for the whole ranking algorithm, right? So maybe they have really good content, maybe they've been around for a long time, or they have a huge number of authoritative backlinks to their site. There's a lot of other reasons that a site that loads slowly might be performing well. So this isn't the be all end all. This isn't going to completely necessarily change your site. If you have awful content and it's not very authoritative content and it's, all AI generated or whatever that is, that's not going to necessarily make up if you have a quickly loading website. So you will see sites that rank pretty high that don't have good page load speeds, but this is one of those areas that if you can help tweak it and you can improve it, you're bound to help your site rank, at least for certain areas of your site and content. All right, so the largest content paint. First input delay. This is the time from when your user interacts with your page to the time the browser responds. So they've clicked on something, they've landed on the page. How quickly does the site respond? Okay. In this one, Google likes to see it less than 100 milliseconds. So these guys are kind of almost in the green. Anything over 300 milliseconds is going to be in the red. That's going to be a big fail. All right. Cumulative layout shift. This is that annoying thing that happens, especially on news sites and stuff like that, where You land on the page, start reading the article, and all of a sudden an ad pops up and it pushes your content down, right? Google doesn't like this either because one, it's a really bad experience, but two, it's almost a fake out because if you're about to click on something and suddenly it shifts and you've clicked on that banner, well, now they're getting fake banner clicks that they can tell advertisers about that aren't real because you meant to click on something else. It's annoying for us. Google knows that. So the layout shift where the page is shifting all around, like I said, you see it a lot on like news sites and stuff like that sometimes where, an ad pops up and everything goes down. That's what they're talking about here. And so they measure this. It measures the total of the layout shifts on the page and unexpected shifts. So they like to see it at less than a 0.01, and anything above a 0.25 is considered poor. So as you can see, this site is well above that 0.25. And so it's considered deeply in the red. That's not a great experience for their customers. All right. First content pane. It's pretty much like what you would expect, right? So the first content pane is pretty much what you'd expect. It measures the time from when you first navigate to the page and when any part of the page is rendered. So you'll see examples of this where it's a blank page and you can't see all of the page loading. And so you can see, for instance, on this site, it actually does a pretty good job. It's showing you the page from the beginning. You're seeing content from the very start, whereas this site is also showing you the content. But when you don't have that, these will be blank in the beginning. So let's see if we can show you an example of that. And so you can see the first two panes of this, the time that it takes for it to load, and then there's not the entire site loading for the rest of that time period. Okay, so that's first content pane. You can tell is well into the red if it's above 4 seconds. So interaction to next paint. This looks at the overall responsiveness of the site. So it's taking, how long does it take to respond when you click or tap or any kind of keyboard interactions to occur, right? And so they want to see this below 200 milliseconds. So anything above 500 milliseconds, which you can see this one is considered poor, all right? And then time to first byte. This one is also extremely important because this is going to look at how long it takes for the server to respond to you. So if you come to the site, you've initiated a visit to the site, how long does that take for the server to even recognize your presence and to send data back? It's not starting to necessarily load the page yet, but it's sending data back. They want to see that below a 0.8 seconds. And you can see the site is over 3, which is way beyond what they want to see. So that's why it's failing. Okay. So those are what those metrics mean. We'll put a link in the description to more information where you can read more details about that and see different examples. The page performance section that we talked about is the old section or old thing that you used to see. It's not based on consumer or user data. This is actually based on the bots. And so this is still available on the Page Insights tool, and it will show you how the site is performing for the bots. And you can see even the site is still not performing great for the bots. It's a 54 out of 100. That's better than many of our clients that we've seen when we start working with them. We do have clients that are in the single digits or in the low double digits, like 10, 12, 15, which is not good. And so you can see they use some of the same metrics. First content pane, largest pink. And then they show you how, like I said before, how that goes over time. So it shows you how your page is rendering as samples over time. Now, what's handy about this section is it actually starts to show things that you can improve. So the main thread, how the site is loading, what's being done. You can reduce JavaScript execution. That's going to help with rendering the page more quickly because these things are potentially blocking your site from loading. And so let's take a look at the one that was failing pretty badly. Again, large layout shifts, right? So it's showing on the page, it's going to give you examples of areas that are shifting in the layout. The largest paint element that's loading too slowly, reduced JavaScript time, reduce unused CSS. That's very important. So this is going to tell you a lot of the things that are potentially impacting your site, right? So what's that mean for you? Like a lot of that is development stuff, right? It's developers. Maybe you don't even have access to that, or you are on a closed system like Wix or even Shopify to some extent. It's content management or commerce systems where you really can't impact the page speed by reducing JavaScript. Maybe the JavaScript is already built in and you don't have access to it. If that's the case, then we'll talk about a couple things that you can do. But if you do have access to that stuff, if you do have a development team, whether in-house or third party, you can work with them to start taking a look at those JavaScripts, the CSSs, that type of stuff, to try to mitigate the impact on load time. But there are some other things that you can do even if you don't have access to that, right? So let's talk about a few of those. So one of the big contributors to page load speed times for a lot of smaller sites that may have, let's say it's a WordPress site and you are hosting it at a shared environment. So your website is on, it's a cheap website. Maybe it's, $5.99 hosting a month. Odds are you're sharing that server with a number of other websites that are all demanding that server time. And so one of the things to look at is whether you are using shared hosting and maybe upgrade that to dedicated hosting where you have your own servers. You're not competing with other websites to use the resources of that server, which is going to slow it down. You also don't know whether those other websites on that server are getting hacked and being used for various illegal activities, sending mass emails or something like that. And all of that is going to slow that server down to a halt, right? And so you're impacted by that. So upgrade your hosting, and that is one thing that you can do. That you don't need development teams to do that. You can just upgrade your hosting plan. The other thing that's easy to do, although time consuming, is to make sure that your images and video on the site that you're using are compressed. And so what I mean by that is in your typical image file, like a JPEG or PNG, there's a lot of unused data in that file. Photoshop has gotten a lot better at compressing files like JPEGs and stuff like that. But there are tools on the market like Tiny JPG and Tiny PNG. We'll put links to those below as well. But those are essentially free. You can upload your image, it will compress it. And in compressing it is removing a lot of that extraneous data. You'll sometimes save like 20% of the file size, which means faster load times on the user end if that file is smaller. And it's not impacting the quality of the image. It's only impacting the extraneous data that's in the image file. And so by compressing those images, you can speed up their load time and make sure that, even without technical help, that the images are loading fast. Now, you can also impact both text and image and JavaScript and all the rest of it in load times if you use something called the CDN. And so that's a content distribution network. Now, a lot of your, content management systems today, so if you're on something like Wix or if you're on Shopify or something like that, they have their own CDNs. They're using CDNs in many cases. What a CDN is it distributes your content. So it takes like your images, it takes all those downloadable files and distributes them on servers all around the world so that whoever is accessing your site is getting that content closer to them. It's not having to go all the way around the world to ping a server that may or may not be getting hit a lot by traffic. So it's distributing the traffic and it's distributing it geographically so that they're closer. It's going to download faster, it puts less taxation and strain on your individual server so that it's going to serve up those files faster. And so if you don't have that as part of your hosting package, there are products out there that you can get CDNs that are third party, and they will distribute that content for you and help speed up your website. The other thing to look for with trying to speed up your site is third-party plugins, apps, tools, that kind of stuff. So what I mean by that is things like it could be a chat bot on your website, or it could be tools and plugins in WordPress that are scanning certain things on your site. It could be any of those kind of third-party tools that you're putting in your site that is injecting code onto your site. So for instance, if you have a Shopify store, if you have various apps that you've implemented, maybe it's comparing products, or you may like this product, or that type of thing, whether it's a pop-up or an interstitial for serving up a newsletter or offering them a deal on a product. Any of those kind of third-party plugins are going to add time to load, and some of them are absolutely horrible for your site. So what I would recommend that you do is look through your site and see what's there on your site and what those plugins are. We're going to link to a couple tools that we use to show you products or the third-party plugins that may be on your site that you may not even be aware of. Those could be old analytics tools that you don't use. They could be old plugins. They could be old, whatever. We've seen companies with dozens and dozens of plugins that they aren't even aware that are still there because maybe somebody 5 years ago put a whole bunch of them on the site and they just never got removed. All of that is going to add extra strain and load time to your individual pages, particularly for products that, like chat and stuff like that, that could impede the downloading of the file. Those are things that are going to be loading before your HTML loads or before certain elements load, and that's going to increase the load times and performance of your products. So using tools like that to scan your site, to understand what's on them, it makes it immensely easier for your site to perform better if it doesn't have that extra weight on it. If you are putting third-party tools on your website that need to be put on through like JavaScript or a pixel or some sort of HTML that is going into your site manually, one of the things we encourage you to do is do that through Google Tag Manager or another tag management system, because then that gives you access as the marketer to be able to easily remove that. And whether that's an analytics tool, testing tool, any of those types of things, chat tools, those can all be implemented through Google Tag Manager. That gives you the control, and you can then easily shut them off and test whether that is what's causing the slowdowns on your page. And so you can actually see, okay, it is this tool that's causing that. Maybe we can remove it or find a better tool or talk to the developers about how to load that maybe in parallel so it's not blocking the code. There are tools for specific platforms like on WordPress that will help you actually compress text on your site or compress unused HTML, that kind of thing. And those will actually help speed up your site too. Again, they're usually specific to the platform that they're on. So that's why we're not giving you any necessarily specific examples, because those same tools are maybe not available for Shopify and that kind of thing. So that's going to get very technical. Helping your site run faster is something that there's a lot of moving parts. It's not easy to do. It generally takes a really good dev team to help you make sure that your site is performing well. But it's something that you can measure, and it's something that you can see, like, as you make changes, is this getting better? And is it impacting my search results? And so as you make these changes, document when you've made them, try to keep an eye on how your site is performing and if it is actually having an impact. Obviously, you can start to see the page load times improve over time too if you've made any changes. And even if it doesn't necessarily move the scale on your SEO, it's probably going to make your users stick around and convert better. So it's worth doing. I hope this is helpful. So if you have anything that you're doing, we'd love to hear about it. Leave it in the comments. If there's tools that you're using that you just love that help you improve your site load times, leave those in there as well. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.